Welcome back, guys. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the antiderivative of sine and cosine functions. A little flip-flop from the derivative, so let's go ahead and take a look at the formula. So the antiderivative of sine is kind of strange, but the antiderivative of sine is negative cosine. Well, okay, derivatives, remember when you take the derivative, sine was positive cosine, derivative of cosine was negative sine. That's exactly it. Remember, when we take the derivative of this, it should return back here. So if I take the derivative of negative cosine, that would be negative, derivative of cosine is negative sine, isn't it? So if I take the derivative of negative cosine, negative sine is what's going to give us positive sine. So the antiderivative of sine is actually going to be negative cosine. So flipped from derivatives, I understand that, but that's the reasoning why right there. Think about that a little bit more if you don't quite get it. Hopefully it clicks. Just like right here, derivative of sine is cosine, so the antiderivative of cosine is sine. So that's the reason why the antiderivative of cosine is positive, but the antiderivative of sine is negative. Other than that, pretty easy to do. So let's go ahead and take a look at this first example. So remember, we can bring that 4 out to the front and then take the antiderivative of sine. And the antiderivative of sine is negative cosine. So what we have is 4 times, so the antiderivative of sine, and this is going to be, oops, I forgot my little antiderivative sign, the integral sign there. And so that's going to be negative cosine. And then we'll have our plus c, right? And actually, I think the c would technically go in the parentheses maybe. I don't know. It doesn't really matter because anything you do to c, it's just going to stay a c because we don't know what it is yet. We'll learn more about that later. But anyways, 4 times negative cosine is going to be negative 4 cosine of x plus c. So that's the way cosine works. So sine works. Antiderivative of sine becomes negative. Over here, you could already see that if the antiderivative of sine is negative cosine, the double negative, you'll see right now. Bring that negative 10 out to the front. And the antiderivative of sine is going to be negative cosine. And then the double negative is going to actually make it positive. One more example. Antiderivative of cosine is just positive sine. So this one's pretty simple. We'll bring the negative 13 out to the front and we'll derive the cosine of x separately. So integrate. Integrate antiderivative, we're interchanging those words. So antiderivative of that's going to be negative, not negative. See, there I am making that mistake. Antiderivative of cosine is positive sine of x. And then we'll have the plus c, negative 13 out front. Multiply those together to have negative 13 sine of x plus c. And there you have it. That's the antiderivative of sine and cosine, just like derivatives. The only difference is, remember, antiderivative of sine is now negative cosine, antiderivative of cosine is positive sine. So a little flipped from what we're used to, but still very similar.